Hello and welcome to Yerushalmi Berachos Daf Chavtes in the Oz V'Hadar print. We're going to talk about Tfilas Keri and a couple of interesting ha'aras. I just want to leave off that both the Bavli and the Yerushalmi both say the famous shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that Divrei Torah are not Makabel Tumah, and therefore we're not makbid on it. You can look at the Rambam in Hilchos Kriya Shema, Parak Hey at the end, the last halacha, which we're going to talk, Parak Dalet at the last halacha, which we'll talk about shortly, and a ha'ara that has to do with the page. But he basically says also that it's batal. The Shulchan Aruch says the same thing, that we don't follow Tfilas Ezra. Rechaim Kanievsky brings down Zatzal in his Sefer Orchos Yosher, very beautiful thing that he says he doesn't know where the Sefer is. So if he doesn't know what Sefer it's in, that means that it's not easily accessible. I would love to hear if somebody found this somewhere, and I'll give you a remez for today, where it's Rumaz here, but it's not clearly a remez. So obviously he knew the Yerushalmi. He himself has a pirush on Yerushalmi and was an expert in Yerushalmi, but he says that all the Rishonim that we have nowadays, they were zocha that their Torah was learned and kept and stuck with us because they were makbid on Tfilas Ezra, which basically means that they have a tremendous amount of kedusha. And the Gemara actually says, Rav Yanai says, Shamati shemekil machmir and ba. There are people that are machmir and mekel on Tfilas Ezra. V'chol hamachmir ba ma'arich yam betova. They'll have a long life with good stuff, good. So you see a remez that something good will happen for somebody that lives with kedusha. So I want to say the following: the Gemara tells us that the Mishnah says a Baal Keri mahar belibo, and it's a discussion in the Gemara whether mahar belibo he says Shema. Does that mean that he thinks it, or does that mean that he actually says the words? But because here kedibur dami, which is a whole discussion in the Gemara. I don't want to get into the complex nuances here, but basically it says that the Gemara, the Yerushalmi quotes the Bavli. This is what it says: Taman Amrinan. There in Babel they say, that's what most of the Rishonim say. Most of the Achronim. By the way, when I say Rishonim, I mean like the Rishonim off the page: Tosas, Rush, Ramban, Rashba, etc. Maybe Rashi occasionally, or Rif, etc. But and when I say the Achronim, it usually means people on the page, the Charedim, Bnei Moshe, in this case for this Masechta. So Afil Shmoa Divrei Torah Aser. A Baal Keri is even prohibited to hear Torah. Now we don't find this concept easily said. Why? Amar Rav Yudah bar Titas, interesting name. Rav Acha b'shem Rav Elazar, that it's ketchila. It's like they're originally at Sinai. Why? That the people weren't allowed to even hear the Divrei Torah there. They couldn't go. They had to separate for 3 days beforehand to make sure that they weren't tamei. Okay, so like this. So the Sameach, Mayor Simcha Devinsk, a Kohen Midivinsk, he lived from 1843 to 1926. He was a Lamdan Atzim, doesn't need my approval. So he has a very interesting shtickle on the Rambam, which is where our Sameach is, in Hilchos Kriya Shema, Parak Dalet Halacha Ches. I encourage you to look it up because he ties into Yerushalmi. So he says it's mashma that, and listen, I want to zoom out for a second because it's going to take a long time to explain, but I'm going to try to make it very quick. That does the Yerushalmi and Bavli agree? Meaning, you're quoting me that it says in Bavel, Afilu Shmoa Divrei Torah, that the Baal Keri is usher to even listen to Divrei Torah. Now, everyone agrees he can't talk Torah. Okay, so Mahar Belibo means he should think the Shema. But what about, is he allowed to listen to Torah? So is it that the Yerushalmi is saying we don't agree with that halacha at all? He suggests maybe that Yerushalmi actually agrees, but it disagrees with the Raya, and the Raya is that it's brought from Maimon Har Sinai, that the Yerushalmi can't agree with the Raya. And that's why it says that they taught this brisa there, but us, we don't agree with it. Why not? What's the Raya? The Raya is that they heard Divrei Torah at Sinai. So you see that, and they had to separate from their wives. So why is that not a good Raya according to the Yerushalmi? So Meir Simcha says a beautiful thing. He says that the Gemara earlier said that a katan, that a child is allowed to read Shema. Now the Bavli, it says, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, I didn't explain that right. It says that a katan is allowed to say benching for his father. So the Bavli, we know the famous Gemara in Berachos, says that that's only if he's mechuyev b'davar. If they're both drabanan, then it could be yotzei. But the Yerushalmi, the simple reading of the Yerushalmi, seems to say that no, any son that reads it, even if he's mechuyev derabanan only, and the father is mechuyev doraisa, by the father answering amen to it, it's like he said the words, which is a fascinating lumdus of Shomei Ka'oned. Is it like you said it? Is it not? Etc. Meir Simcha discusses this very briefly about how halal you actually have to say it. Which again, why can't I have a shliach to put on my tefillin for me and I can answer amen? You can for the bracha, but not for the gufa maisa. Sometimes there's something that you actually have to say the words like hal. Anyway, so the Yerushalmi seemingly held that the father is allowed to, who's Mechuyev B'Doraisa and benching, is allowed to answer Amen to the son, and he's Yotze by saying Amen. It's as if he said the words, and therefore he's Yotze. Now, the Charedim has a whole shtickle explaining maybe where the Bavli and Yerushalmi are arguing, or maybe trying to reconcile them. Ayin Sham, it's on the page before, on Daf Lamed Zayin, if you want, or Lamed Ches. If you want, you'll see the long Charedim has an explanation. So Rameir Simcha says like this: according to the Yerushalmi, when they were at Har Sinai, the Medrash says that they answered Hain, yes, and they answered no for any Isser that they heard. So anytime that starts the Dibros they heard from Hashem, do this, believe, yes, believe. Anochi Hashem Lagacha, Cain. And for Lo Sirtzach, Lo, they said no. But, and according to another Madramer, they said yes for everything, which meant yes, I agree, yes, I accept, which is the same thing. But they answered, which is a form of Amen, says Rav Meir Simcha. So Mamela, according to the Yerushalmi, sure, whenever you answer Amen, it's as if you said the words. So, of course, there it's usher for him to learn Torah by thinking, because you're answering Amen. So, according to the Yerushalmi, even though you're not on the same level, L'chora, as Hashem or Moshe, I mean, the Rameir Simcha's pshat also needs a little bit more depth, because what does that mean? It needs more amkas. You have to look at it and understand what exactly is he saying. They heard it at Har Sinai. Is it that Hashem can't be motzi them, or Moshe? What they heard? Obviously, Hashem was talking, so to speak, Kaviyachol, right? But anyway, Kol Dvarim Ein Chamshon, right? So that needs an explanation exactly what they're even hearing and how they're being Yotze. But this is what he says. So therefore, yeah, sure. So they're answering. So since they're answering Hain, so therefore, of course, it's usher, but that has nothing to do with you being usher to hear. So don't bring a raya you can't bring a raya. But the Bavli held that no, that since they were answering Amen, it's as if they said it. So Mamela, from there, it's a perfect raya that just hearing the words is usher. And so that raya would work. Ayin Sham and the Sameach, very fascinating how he does that. But remember, there's also a shaila. If somebody hears a bracha and doesn't answer Amen, is he Yotze? Like if you hear Kiddush and you didn't answer Amen, are you Yotze? So there's a lot to discuss here. The last thing I want to leave off with, which I hope is a little bit more clear, because that is definitely a very complex topic, is that the Gemara says that a person, again, as we said, the halacha is that we don't have to be makbid on tefillas Keri, but the halacha is that some people were makbid on it. So it says a story in the Gemara, which is very fascinating. Rav Yossi Bar Chalafta was traveling on a donkey, and the donkey driver was a lowlife person, and they got to a ditch filled with water. So the man said, "Oh, okay, I have to go tovel myself." He was Jewish, but not a very good person. So Rav Yossi said to him, "No, don't danger yourself. Keep going. You're not mechuyev to do it." So the guy said back that no, I have to be matar myself from nida and eshes ish. So Rav Yossi said, "Okay, for that you should endanger you still shouldn't endanger yourself. Don't do it." Meaning the guy had been over on these averas, and he thought either, like some of the Mefarshim say, like we said last time, either that could be matar him or that it made him feel better. So, but when the man didn't listen to him, he still went down. So then Rav Yossi said to him, "Let him go down and let him not come up." And that's what happened. The man died, which seems very severe. But we see that there's an inyan that the Chachamim have a right to punish people, and this was Bidei Shemayim, like the Tuv Yerushalayim writes. So I was Baruch Shekivanti that why did this man drown? So we know that the Misa, that someone is chayav for Nida, is a Misa Bidei Shemayim, because it's a Isser Karis. But we know that Eshes Ish is actually the only one of the ervas that a person is chayav chenek for. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that even though the Misas Bezin were low batal the punishments. And somebody that's chayav chenek, he might fall into the river or get an illness where his stomach, where his throat closes in on him. So that's exactly what this guy got. He was over in Eshes Ish, and that's mamash what happened. He literally drowned. So we see how careful we have to be with the words of Chazal, following them, but also there's justice in the world that Hashem takes care. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day.